الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ربي يسر وأعني يا كريم وافتح بالحق إنك الفتاح العليم. In our previous session, we covered perhaps a third of the material Imam al-Ghazali cites in support of his nuanced, balanced, moderate and profoundly humane definition of how and what and when we should eat. He's indicated at the beginning of this book that he's juxtaposing the two basic bodily desires as opposed to mental desires of the human creature. But he also indicates that they're quite different. And I had occasion to allude to the fact that our civilization and our mind has historically associated gluttony with the events that precipitated our present human predicament, and that sexual desire is much less problematized. And I think it's worth pausing on this for a few moments. Firstly, because we exist in the ruins, at least, of what was once a Christian civilization, and certain assumptions that have influenced even ourselves through schooling, the media and other inescapable channels of communication are still based on broadly Christian, ultimately Augustinian preferences and ways of viewing the human creature. Partly also because this is inherently an important issue. After all, we are embodied creatures. That is the way Allah has set up those who are to be His khulafa on earth. And we need to be fully aware of how body, mind and spirit should engage in a harmonious way to bring about a holy and balanced and good individual. And there is a tendency in the West and amongst Muslims in the West to giggle when these topics are mentioned. I'm not entirely sure why. Again, this is probably the result of some Western idea that these aspects of who we are dirty or trivial, fit for locker room gossip, but certainly not serious topics for considered religious reflection, other than in terms of the standard denunciations hurled at abuses from the minbar. But in fact, this is one of the ways in which Islam defines the human creature that is most irreconcilable with the traditional Western and certainly the traditional Christian assumption. I mentioned earlier that celibacy was regarded as the normative state of the worshipper of God in traditional Christianity for centuries and centuries. And this is still the case in the Catholic Church, because it is through renouncing that aspect of our persona that we draw close to the supposedly sexless life of the blessed in paradise. One of the reasons why, or the ulama have proposed as one of the possible reasons why we have in the Quran itself a sexualized image of the next world, an argument against that Christian perspective, which had led to a denial of what cannot be denied, because it's part of who we are. You cannot deny it, you cannot neutralize it, short of drastic surgery. It's going to pop up sooner or later, whatever you do to it. The ancient Greeks knew this very well. Eros is the god that can't be disobeyed, can't be denied. You cut a deal with Eros, but you don't defeat him. He always gets you somehow, however you may think that you've won. So the Islamic strategy here, which is fundamental, because our religion is based on practices to do with the body, wudu, personal grooming and everything, they're as much a part of the religion as everything else. They're not part of some secular realm. And it's a measure, I think, of the westernization of the Muslim conscience that we have regarded this as a somewhat marginal or even tricky or embarrassing subject. And traditionally this was never the case, because traditional Islamic civilization, in fact, like most traditional civilizations, was very sex positive. Sexuality was not regarded as some impossible problem that should be dealt with by the pious by complete renunciation. It was just another part of human reality. And this was the case also in most branches of traditional Hinduism, and indeed most traditional religions. Buddhism also, I suppose, sided with Christianity in allocating a privileged religious status to monks and nuns. But Islam, Judaism, and to a large extent Hinduism never did that. And of course the primordial religions certainly didn't do that. Perhaps one should advance in connection with this a very brief, in my case not terribly sincere, apology for broaching topics that many Muslims regard as inappropriate topics for discussion in mixed gatherings. But the ulama say, La haya'a fi din. There is no shame when discussing matters for the sake of religion. These are areas of fiqh, questions of tahara, how you clean yourself, how you deal with states induced by the marital act, that are something that we have to know. These are wajib knowledges. The ulama never apologize for bringing these up. It's always treated in a matter-of-fact way.